What small business relief options are available for me? Find out today on Tax Talk with special guest, attorney William E. Vinsco Jr. Welcome to Tax Talk. This is Patrick Best, the author of the Essential Tax Resolution Survival Guide and tax attorney at Best Tax Solutions. Today's a special episode of Tax Talk because I have with me attorney William Vinsco from Vinsco and Associates. He's agreed to step in here and talk to us a little bit about some of the provisions of the CARES Act, the Stimulus Act that was just passed by Congress. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. This is a great opportunity, and you do a great job.
Thank you. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell the viewers about you, about your practice?
Absolutely. We do a lot of, I always say I'm the non-PI attorney. I do a lot of corporate litigation, real estate, business, and we handle different bank and tax matters, a lot of tax sales, real estate taxation, business and finance type of litigation. And through that, we have garnered a reputation for being able to take what are traditionally transactional cases, title insurance, all those things, and take them to court. So it's kind of a fun little niche.
Great. Well, we're glad to have your expertise here. Have you been working with different business clients about in terms of implementing the CARES Act provisions and advising them on the stuff that was available to them?
Yes, we have. We've been doing a lot of it for the small businesses and even from medium-sized businesses. The interesting challenge on this is how it's changing every day, every hour. And while we have been working with different clients, we're trying to keep everything up to date, constantly monitoring what's happening and making sure that everybody gets a constant flow of information. So it's working good so far.
Great. How have your businesses been reacting to the governor's stay-at-home order?
The stay-at-home order has been challenging for a couple reasons. Obviously, everybody wants this virus to be over and they want to get back to work. That's the big issue. It creates some inherent conflict issues or concerns. For example, in this entire CARES Act, they want us to retain employees as much as possible. In doing so, if they are prohibited from coming in or if certain employees are unable to remote work because it's either, like for example, a law firm, there's filing issues, there's phone answering issues, those types of things you can't really do from home. We're just making sure that no one's going to be penalized, and if they bring them back before June 30th, once this pandemic issue subsides, that they're still going to qualify for it. So we want to, while people are accepting of it, us as lawyers and advisors, tax advisors as well, are making sure that all of the provisions are met and that you're not going to get caught in a snafu. The good part is almost all 50 states, with the exception of 6 or 7, are doing the stay-at-home order. So basically everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff is changing. I think you said earlier it was changing almost minute by minute in terms of how we're responding to everything, how the laws are changing.
Correct. And that's what's very interesting about this, because you have, in addition to the CARES Act issues, you have state equivalent issues with, like for in Pennsylvania, the Department of Community and Economic Development is doing applications for SBA loans, small business loans. And, you have to look at what opportunities you have. And then the PPP program, which we'll talk about in a little bit, if you're getting money through that, you cannot use it for the same things you're using it for when you're getting state application money. So there has to be some, different benchmarks you have to hit, and also some safeguards you have to employ when you're going to be using these funds.
Right. So let's get into some of those specifics then. We already kind of talked about a couple of different programs, but I see basically 3 provisions, at least from the federal stimulus provisions, that we're looking at, like payroll tax credits. We're looking at the economic injury disaster loans, which some people are calling EIDL, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is the PPP. Is that like a fair assessment of the federal provisions?
Yeah, for the federal provisions, absolutely.
Okay, and then you also mentioned that there were some state provisions available as well.
Exactly. For example, Pennsylvania, again, they released $71 million for small businesses to get a portion of their funds there. That is currently closed because within 24 to 48 hours, they had already reached $86 million in requests. So that had already dropped. So they're hopefully going to get other funding and be able to put that back in. And I anticipate they will, just like I believe the federal government will release additional funds as well. But there are some state programs you can go through.
So let's start with tax credits. So there's some payroll tax credits that are in the CARES Act meant to protect or to assist the small businesses in providing payroll through this. Everyone's dealing with decreased income and reacting to the stay-at-home order. So what can we do in terms of payroll tax credits as a result of the CARES Act?
I think this is a great program because if you look at an average payroll, the payroll taxes are really something that's going to hit hard. And that's making it difficult to retain employees. So what they're saying is basically that as a 50,000-foot view, you're basically able to withhold paying payroll taxes from March 13th through December 31st of 2020, depending on how long you need to do it. And there is a payback provision through, I think it's half by 2021, half by 2022. But the actual formula is that it's $5,000 per employee, or 50% of the qualified wages paid to employees per quarter, capped at $10,000. But if you have under 100 full-time employees, all wages paid to the employees, regardless of whether the employees are providing services, qualify for this credit. And that's what's going to be advantageous for small businesses like mine and yours and everything else, where we have less than 100 employees, but we still want to be able to keep the ball rolling. And I really think that this is going to be addressed again. From what I'm hearing is they're going to keep massaging this program and maybe even give it as a release in a future stimulus package. It's not there yet, but I believe that that's probably going to happen.
I was actually a little surprised that a lot of the provisions of the CARES Act actually did relate to small business. Oftentimes when they say small business, what they really mean is multi-billion-dollar businesses.
Exactly. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
But there's employee caps. So you mentioned that this one is 100 employees, which really is, it's a small business if you have less than 100 employees.
Yeah.
Additional sense.
And it's interesting because just for the number of employees issue concern is they want to make sure that you're going to retain them, but there's a little bit of a financial analysis that has to be done, because what I'm finding from certain employees and certain, not of mine, but of other businesses we're advising, if you go on unemployment and you get the $600 increase based on your total wage income for a certain period of time, in certain situations, it's more advantageous to go on unemployment than it is for the company to retain you. Now, that's a personal employee decision on that issue. But, if the employee could sit home and collect and not have to work and still make more money, who is going to not take that opportunity? Now, your employer is going to want to make sure you come back, especially if you're a good employee. But that cost analysis is going to have to be done on certain situations.
Right. And I guess I'll jump to the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, because I know there's a lot of provisions within that that are encouraging employers to keep people employed rather than laying them off.
Yeah, I think this program is really fascinating. I think it's a great program. I think that this is going to help businesses, and as a daisy chain, if you will. You're allowed to pay your rent, allowed to pay your utilities, obviously to pay your employees. And what we're encouraging clients to do is to open up a separate bank account, put that money into the account. So if you do get it and you do qualify for it, then you will be able to make sure that you're using it for the proper purposes. If there's an audit or something, keep good records, and you can hand everything right over so you can hopefully have it qualified for a complete forgiveness at the very, very end, which is one of the best parts of this program in my personal opinion. Also, with regard to this, giving 2.5 times your gross salary payments is really going to help out especially when you combine it with the payroll tax credit, because you're actually going to be able to extend it a little longer than just 2.5 pay periods, or 2.5 months worth of pay periods. So there are real advantages to having this, and hopefully it's going to allow businesses to start up. And then, if, for example, if you pay your rent or pay your mortgage payments, that those other companies that are depending on the rents are going to be able to have income as well. So it's going to start that daisy chain I'm talking about, which I think is fantastic.
Right, because I've seen a lot, read a lot now about different people that are saying, oh, I can't afford my rent. And then, of course, the landlords chime in and say, well, if you don't pay your rent, I can't pay my mortgage. So that really there's that ripple within the economy. If we don't get the businesses paying their rents, things are going to get bad.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I'm reading a lot about it because I'm trying to stay on top of it. A good friend out of New York City has done an analysis of this. And what they're asking for as part of this PPP program is 12 months of your salary payments, everything that you're paying for wages, salary or not, whatever your wages are. And if you give them that, if you've been even, stagnant, or just with minor increases over the year, you're going to be fine. For those businesses who in the last 8 months have had a trajectory of increasing business, hiring employees, your average gross monthly salary is going to be less than what your employee retention rate is going to be. Because if you are a startup business, for example, or if you are someone who really ramped up in the last quarter of 2019, or even in the third quarter to start, you're going to have to really do some massaging of your current payroll, because you're going to want to retain those people, but the assistance is not going to be enough to really protect for the full 2.5 months that it's intended to do. So there's going to have to be some tweaking either on the government side or in your individual business.
Well, the other program that we have here is the EIDL, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That one's also through the SBA. Can you tell us a little bit about this? What's available with the EIDL?
That's available for working capital, which is a fantastic program. The EIDL is also, it's a little cumbersome to fill out the application, because you have to make sure that you have all of your personal financial statements as well as your business financials to get it done. But you can get it done in less than 2 hours, and the opportunities, I think, are grand, because you'll be able to have this qualify for working capital if you're going to make improvements to your business or certain upgrades. There's a whole list of qualifications that you can do, but the financial ability to stay afloat during this time is going to be great. They're going to have, it's going to be very, very low interest, and then hopefully in future stimulus packages, there could be a partial or whole forgiveness. But it gives people a glimmer of hope. And I'm recommending that everybody apply for any of them they have, just because that EIDL is going to supplement where the PPP program falls off.
And the EIDL has also had that additional provision that they were going to give you $10,000 within 3 days, and you weren't going to have to necessarily pay that back. So they were calling it a grant. And as far as I could tell, like every business that I've come across has applied for that.
Yes. I don't know anybody who got it, but I know that they did apply for it.
Well, that was my next question. I have not met one person who's received the funds. I read today that they haven't dispersed any, which of course is which is contradictory to them saying we're going to get it out quickly. It's going to be 3 days. So you too confirm you haven't heard of one person who's received that? No,
I haven't. And the same issues happening with the PPP program. For example, Wells Fargo exhausted their $10 billion allotment within 24 hours over the weekend, and then is now sending an email to their customers saying, hey, listen, go to another bank because we can't do this. If they release more stimulus money, we can open it. We're going to take your application, but if you get it from somewhere else, good luck, because the businesses are really hurting, which shows you what could happen to the economy if this goes a lot longer.
Well, I guess the rollout on this has been a little bit frustrating for my business clients. A lot of banks were learning, like you said, Wells Fargo ran out of money. I think you're going to see a lot of the big banks run out of money. And then on the other side, the smaller banks, I think, are actually having trouble implementing the program. Have you noticed any of that?
Yes, the smaller banks, and you hear rumors about why that is, but the smaller banks have not really been granted access to the SBA portal as fast as the larger banks, and you can make
Right.
your political statement as to why that is. I do know that some of them locally in Northeast Pennsylvania have gotten some approvals as late as this morning. No money has been released, but they said within 48 to 72 hours that should happen. I think that the bigger issue for some of the local banks, even for some of the big banks, but primarily the local banks, are some of the penalties that are attached in other banking acts that if you don't have the correct documentation or other information, they could be fined for. And they don't want to be fined for this. They're trying to do this, but there's not been a ton of guidance from the SBA. And I think that that's a concern for these local banks to say, hey, listen, we're willing to do this. We want to help people, but don't come looking at us if there's something missing. And so
Yeah, I've heard some banks are not even participating, at least a
oh,
couple of the
that's
local
true.
banks. Yep.
That's very true. And, they're trying to get people to do it, but then there's this issue of you after September 11th, you have to know your customer and you have to be already a customer of the bank. So in the case of Wells Fargo, if you bank for Wells Fargo and they're saying you can't do it and you go to PNC, they're going to say, well, you're not a customer here. We don't know you. We're not going to lend. So there are some issues that are going to have to be fine-tuned, but you're exactly right on the local bank issue.
Have you helped any of your clients fill out the packet for the PPP?
Yes, I have. And I found that the PPP has been very, very streamlined. The fact is that it's like a 3-page application. The biggest part of it is making sure you have your 940s and your 941s and proof of your payments, your 401k contributions, and your healthcare costs. If you have that, you could put them in the spreadsheet and get them right in. In any government application I've filled out in the last 20 years, this has been the easiest. But I still think it's mentally cumbersome for some business owners. You have people that run a business from hand to mouth. Most of them, if you like 85% don't have more than a month's worth of reserves. They have other issues that they're concerned about to say, oh my gosh, I've got to sit down and do this application. It's very overwhelming. But I have, in doing this with them, if they have those payroll information, we can move quick on assisting them.
I think a lot of the calls that I'm getting are people who don't necessarily have the best books, aren't up to date maybe.
I got one call this morning, a great guy, hardworking guy. And he said, look, I pay myself when I can pay myself. Like a lot of small businesses do. We've all done it. And he said, I got one guy on the payroll. I said, look, put it in, take your tax return on what you do, pay yourself, and we could submit it in because you have evidence of what you're doing. There's ways to confirm what you've done. Obviously, if you're paying people under the table or if you've been taking cash, that's a lot harder to prove. But, generally speaking, rely on your tax returns and don't be afraid to actually submit it.
And we already talked about Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo already within days announced that they ran out of money. Are you concerned that generally that there's just not enough that was funded into these programs?
I think they're going to keep it funded so that it keeps rolling. My bigger concern is the timing, because I truly believe that there's a shelf life on small businesses. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to say, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to shut down. This is an opportunity for me to fire that employee that hasn't been performing. This is an opportunity for me to downsize and restructure our businesses. Not that those are bad decisions to be made, but when the goal is to keep things moving and keep things moving down the line, I see that if this goes well into May and June, that 2.5 months worth of money is not going to be able to sustain them through the summer. And a good example in my clientele is restaurant businesses, people who have to rehire people and then rebuy all the food stock. And now there's questions about municipalities. Municipalities are now facing this crunch because taxes are not coming in and they're not going to be able to fund their union employees. In cities like Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, they are not going to be able to get all of their health inspections done timely because you're going to have to do health inspections and reopen inspections. So that's more of what I see as being a real practical effect. So while the money's there, the application of how it's going to flow, depending on how long it goes. If it goes to April 30th, I think you'll see it'll be okay. There'll be some hiccups, of course. But May, Virginia's governor closed everything till June 10th. I think that's a catastrophic business, financial, and tax decision. But you're going to see that play out. But I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten calls already from a lot of businesses that are either looking to just shut down. This provided an opportunity for them, or alternatively, we've gotten discussions with a few of them about Chapter 11 already, potentially filing a bankruptcy and trying to restructure some mortgages or potentially eliminate some unsecured debts. But we're already having to look at that because yes, maybe some of these programs are available and maybe it'll help you stay alive. But at the end of this, people are concerned, look, how quickly am I going to be able to get restarted?
How about bank financing? I think that going forward, there's going to be a real problem. I mean, the governors, the presidents, they're all saying, hey, give people a reprieve. Don't pay your mortgage for up to, December 31st. The banks, and this is where they have not thought this out, the banks still have to pay if your taxes and your escrows are rolled into it. The taxes are going to become due. So those of us that do tax sale litigation, mortgage foreclosure avoidance, there's going to be some serious problems. And now I'm reading that some of the smaller banks that depend on that revenue, they're going to have some problems. So I think that next step of the stimulus is going to have to fund some governments and banks to make sure that they stay afloat during that time.
So you think Congress is going to be able to put something together, something additional?
I think they're going to have to. I really do. If you look at Cuomo and you look at Tom Wolf and what they're saying is that, they're not getting the tax revenue. They're not getting the, even paying inheritance taxes. You can't even go to the Register of Wills because they're not taking any documents, or getting there is very difficult. So you're going to have all these people that are going to, allow the revenue to proceed on these state and local governments. They're just not going to be there. So they're going to need that as well. And what you don't want to do is have it be a catastrophic chain where you actually go Act 47 in Pennsylvania for business bank or municipal bankruptcy, or that municipalities just raise taxes and say, hey, next year we have to do this to cover all of our losses from last year. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's going to cause some issues in the next couple of years.
I agree. I'm really hoping that they put some more money together. And I mean, I was actually surprised at how quickly they were able to put together the $2 trillion that they did. Right. It's rare you see that level of bipartisanship.
Yeah, exactly. It's shocking.
Yeah.
It's a testament that it can be done.
Yeah, it can when they want to.
Exactly.
So I'm hoping that they could put something together. I'm hoping that we don't get to a situation where they run out of funds on the PPP and our businesses are still left holding the bag on that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. We'll keep everybody up to date on that as things develop. So I guess before we close here, is there anything that you would like to say to these small businesses that may be watching this, looking for help right now, who are a little concerned or scared about the situation?
Two things. The first thing is you have people like yourself that are very qualified and really know their stuff. People go to you, people go to people like me. We're willing to help. We're not going to kill you with fees. We want to get the small businesses running. Just remember us when we helped you now, and we'll help you later as well. The second thing is more of a philosophical type of thing. What I've found is that even, my own family, we try to eat out twice a week and try to support local businesses because, I have to go in my office because I'm partly essential because we do work for nursing homes and from some businesses. When I have my staff in, I can't go anywhere for lunch. So I try to have it brought in, and a lot of them are closing down. They try to stay open and do the delivery for 3 or 4 weeks. And now we're going into week 5, week 6, week 7. The fact that there's help out there and there's good people out there. If you're a small business, and this is my point, ask for help. Let people know on Facebook that you're open. Let people know that you need some help to stay open. And the human race is really awesome when they need to be. And I really think that we're all going to get through this because unlike the crisis in 2008 or after September 11th, this is hitting everybody. It's not just a specific sector.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right, because I think people are afraid to call sometimes, but you got to pick up the phone. You got to ask for help. That's what we're here for.
I was on TV on another network recently, and I said to them at the end of this, I said, if you think that, I mean, I have a small business. I've got 51 employees across my platform. If you think that I am not laying in bed at night thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? We're all doing it. You're doing it. I'm doing it. And so it's not a bad thing if people at home are doing that. Call us, because we'll be able to tell you what we did and share information.
Right. Well, thank you for coming on to provide us that information. I do appreciate your time. How can people get a hold of you if they're looking for you?
You can always jump on Facebook and go to Vinsco and Associates. On the web, it's vinsco.com. All my information's there. Email, fax, phone. I'll give you my cell phone, whatever. We're all in this together.
I love it. Well, thanks again. I hope to have you on back again, hopefully with a better topic next time.
Hey, listen, congratulations on the show. This is fantastic. I want everybody to watch it because obviously I've worked with you in several capacities in the legal profession for years. You're very knowledgeable. You're very good at what you do, and people should really realize that.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. I'd like to thank Bill again for joining us today here on Tax Talk. Thank you for watching us here. If you thought this video was helpful, please give us a like down below. Don't forget to share this with anyone who could benefit from this information. Subscribe for future information that can help you save money on your taxes, and we'll see you next time on Tax Talk.